Our biggest challenge if we want to use gold leaf with watercolour is that you can't just paint on top of gold leaf. If we were using acrylics or oils, we could. So I want to show you how to combine the two media, because I hope you'll agree the combination is absolutely beautiful. My name's Liz Chatterton. I'm a watercolour artist based in Berkshire. Every week I share tips and tricks that I wish I'd known about ages ago. And this week I want to show you about the lovely combination of gold leaf and watercolour. Now I've painted watercolour and ink on a canvas and then applied gold leaf round the outside. But everything I'm sharing today also applies to painting watercolour on our more traditional paper. Before we go any further, let's talk about gold leaf. So there are all sorts of possibilities, and I've got some just to show you here. So gold leaf, first of all, comes in imitation gold leaf and real gold leaf. Gold leaf is just metal rolled to a very, very fine layer. This is 24 karat gold leaf. And it's beautiful. Look at the shine on that. Absolutely lovely. We handle this with great caution because it's expensive. It goes up and down with the gold price. Imitation gold leaf is probably 1/10 the price, maybe even more, maybe 1/20 of the price of real gold leaf. So I would suggest if you're starting, I would try imitation gold leaf and get to handle it, because it's actually just slightly thicker and easier to handle than the real stuff, the real deal. But look at that. So let's show you what imitation looks like. Imitation leaf is sometimes called Dutch metal or schlag, SCHLAG. It's made of copper alloy, and actually, if you look at it, it's very beautiful. They do come in different shades of gold, so this one actually is a paler gold than the real gold leaf. It is incredibly fine. Let me move it about so you can see. So when you're handling it, turn off fans, turn off air conditioning, otherwise you'll end up with a gold snowstorm. If you're using the real stuff, be really careful as you work. You want to collect all the little bits, and you can either make shell gold with that or save them up for other projects. This you can be a bit more gung-ho with because it's not very expensive. So just as you've got real and imitation, there are two types of gold leaf you can get. We call this loose gold leaf because it's loose from its backing paper. It usually comes with this sort of tissue paper which protects it, keeps it flat and stops it blowing away. Or you can get this sort of gold leaf, which is called transfer gold leaf. It's actually stuck to the backing paper. Way easier to handle. I mean, this has been used, but if you were doing very textured work, you can't get it into deep crevices. Put it on with gold size, just in the same way, but when you've got your tacky glue, you would press it down and then pull it off, and the gold will be left behind. Whereas this is loose and you can push it in, so it's easier to get it into textures. If you're using it with watercolour for the first time, transfer gold leaf might be the way to go. You won't have much texture there at all. Yes, of course, you've got a little bit of texture in your paper, but not much. And this is so easy to handle, and you can get transfer or loose gold leaf in real or imitation. The other thing you might come across is flakes of gold leaf, and they're not actually flakes. They are little bits of imitation gold leaf like this. So those can be great for small projects. You won't get as much shine on them because on this you can put a sheet on without any joins, whereas that you're going to have lots of little joins. Let me show you this one. So this is imitation, and imitation tends to come in these bigger sheets. Always seems to be about 14 centimetres square, which is 5.5 inches. Real gold leaf comes in smaller, usually 10 centimetres. Imitation gold leaf, look at the things that you can get. So this is variegated imitation gold leaf, and they pass electricity through it to get these beautiful random patterns. Look at those colours, aren't they lovely? So you can really enjoy different patterns of gold leaf. You can get copper, you can get silver. Again, silver is either real in which case it will tarnish. Imitation silver leaf is from aluminium and it won't tarnish. Gold leaf doesn't tarnish because gold doesn't tarnish on our rings, whereas imitation does. A word of warning: if you are buying online, be careful. So I bought this online thinking it was imitation gold. Well, it is imitation gold leaf, but it's disgusting. It's like, so it's a lot thicker and it's very like foil, like tinsel you'd use at Christmas. Online it looked fine. It was described as imitation gold leaf. It's really brassy. Let me show you compared to the colour of the proper stuff. You can see how yellow it is compared, and it just doesn't handle in the same way. I will find a project at some point that I will use this for. For this project, I will be using this imitation gold leaf and I'll be using loose sheets. Try and look after your gold leaf and store it carefully. I put it in plastic bags, folders or envelopes. If the edges get scrunched up, you can see a bit scrunchy there, doesn't matter, it's still perfectly usable because you can always fill in the gaps. It does get absolutely everywhere. I've had quite a few questions about applying gold leaf with watercolour, so I thought I would show you how I'm going to apply it around this running fox. The fox is painted in ink and watercolour and is actually on a canvas, but you will go through exactly the same technique if this was on paper or on canvas if you want to apply gold leaf. And the first thing to understand, sorry, I've been gessoing boards here. The first thing to understand is that you cannot paint watercolour on top of gold leaf, whether it's imitation or real gold leaf. The gold leaf just repels the watercolour. So if you want to add it to your image, say as a background, which is what I'm going to do here, you've got to do it separately. Next thing to understand is that the background, any texture in the background is going to show through the gold leaf. The gold leaf is so fine, anything's going to show through. So here I've got a canvas that will show through. If I was on watercolour paper and say it was a knot surface, a cold press surface, then those little hills and valleys would show through. And the more texture there is in the background, the more it disrupts the shine of the gold. So traditionally, gold leaf is applied to an absolutely smooth surface. If you want that sort of smooth surface, if you were on canvas, you'd use a very fine weave canvas and build up the surface, maybe sanding in between time. If you're on paper, use hot press. What we use to stick metal leaf on, gold leaf, is a glue called Size. And this is an acrylic one, and that's the one that I like to use because it dries quicker. There are oil-based ones, but I'm just ignoring those. This only takes about 15 minutes to dry if you put a very smooth, thin layer on. I use Polyvine. That's what I like. There are different ones available. And it dries, and you can see from the bits spilt down the side, to a very flexible, clear finish once it dries. In fact, it dries to a tacky stage. It never fully dries, it's always slightly sticky, and that's what we want for our gold leaf. It just looks like PVA glue, so it's a bit like white school glue, PVA glue, Elmer's glue, whatever you call it, that never really dries. In proper gold leafing, if I was a proper gilder, I would do all sorts of things. So I'd have that very smooth surface and I would apply a thing called bole, B-O-L-E. It's a red iron oxide that you would put under gold leaf. To simulate that, but to make this all easier, what I do is simply, and you saw me do it there, add a little watercolour into my Size and tint it. And you might think, well, why? Firstly, it really helps you see where you've applied it. And secondly, as you put the gold leaf on, it's so thin, it's inevitable that it will crack, tiny hairline cracks, and this colour will shine through. what colour you have underneath does give just a very subtle sort of impact on the final effect. So in Art Deco times, they used to put black under gold leaf, and it gave a very cool effect. Traditionally, I say it's a sort of red, rusty colour. I like blue because that gives sort of almost a verdigris type sort of effect. Using an old brush, I'm not using my watercolour brushes. So we're going to apply the gold size, let it dry just until it's slightly tacky. Depends entirely on how hot or cold it is where you are. And then we're going to apply the gold leaf. So the aim is to apply it in a thin, smooth layer. We don't want brush marks or as few brush marks as possible. In watercolour, we're rather keen on soft and hard edges, but this will give us a very cut out look. Do sometimes try and sort of break up the edges so that some are a little bit more interesting. So say the top of this leg I'm doing now, very smooth, but its belly a bit furrier, so I might dab, and I'm basically doing a zigzaggy edge. If you can see in between these front legs, very small area, so I'm going to have to just do that very carefully with a smaller brush. Say I got something a little bit wrong shape-wise, you can see up here, I can actually cover that up and sort of sculpt the shape of my animal in this case. So there are advantages to doing things this way. You know, if I've got splodges somewhere, I can cover them up and it doesn't matter. I think it's worth taking your time with this process. The smoother you put the gold leaf on, the more you think about the quality of your edges. So here I'm just going to slightly overlap to a slightly broken edge. You could see me just dabbing it there. Thinking about all those things will make a small, subtle, but really important difference to the end result. Now, say you do this and you do miss an area and you apply your gold leaf and think, oh, I wish I'd done some more. Don't worry, because you can always fill in any gaps or add a little bit more. That's easy. As always, taking stuff off is hard. Adding extra, a lot easier. Now, you might be tempted, and I have seen people say that you can do this. I personally think it's very hit or miss, but you may be tempted just to use ordinary white glue instead of gold size. The big problem is that you've got to catch it at exactly the right moment. If your glue is wet, it just turns your gold leaf into mush. If it's too dry, then it won't stick. So gold size is designed to stay what they call open. You look for the open time of the glue, and that means when it'll be workable. I can't remember the exact open time of this one. It's about 12 hours. So you can put it on, let it dry, and 12 hours later it will still be sticky enough to grab the gold leaf, and that is great. So it does give you time for big projects. If we look round its face, I've done whiskers. I could, if I wanted to, and I wanted that effect, I could carefully paint round the whiskers and leave them clear. I don't want to do that. I don't think it would look very good because inevitably they would become quite thick. So I am going to gold leaf straight over the top of them, and then I will use some Indian ink on top of the gold leaf. I said that ink and watercolour don't go on top of gold leaf. the ink actually does to a certain extent. It's not very controllable. It doesn't move and blend in the same way as it would on paper or prepared canvas like this. But for a few lines, you could definitely go on top, and even say an acrylic pen, like a Posca pen, those can be really good. Any tiny details like whiskers, I think, look far better if you put them over the top of the gold leaf. So on your project, decide where you're putting your gold leaf and then apply the gold size as smoothly and in as interesting a way as possible. Once we've done sort of edging, then of course we can move to a far bigger brush. And a bigger brush, you will always get a smoother application. Should you be on a canvas like I am, don't forget sides. Okay, so we have continued nice and methodically, trying to make sure we haven't got any really sort of thick and thin areas, trying to make sure we haven't got any particularly visible brush marks. I'm not being paranoid about it because this is on a textured surface anyway, but you know, I think that will be pretty good. So if you want a flat background, then all you need to do is wash your brush. Any spare you've got, obviously you've tinted it, so you're not going to put it back into your bottle, but if you had another project in the next couple of days, you could just put some cling film over the top, plastic wrap to stop it drying up. If you get rid of it, I would pour the excess into the bin where it will dry and then wash with plenty of water. Wouldn't pour lots down your sink because you don't want that setting in your plumbing. But I do not want a totally flat background. Part of this, doing this technique, I like to bring some of that gold into the subject and some of the subject out. So what I'm going to do is load up my brush, just with a little of that left over, and then tap it on my finger to get a few little dots. So I'm going to bring the gold into the subject. Of course, totally depends on your style and on the subject you're doing, but for me, with my animals, that's what I'm going to do. I would like to put some larger marks into the background, and I'll put drops of the gold size so that they form a nice little dome. So I'm loading my brush and doing a drop. If by any chance I get a shape that I do not like, or it goes in a place that I do not like, I could brush it out immediately. Now, I'm only going to do a few of these. It's just for effect, just to add a little bit of interest. When you are happy with what you've done, so in this case, the background will be dry in about 15 minutes, and you know it's dry when it doesn't come off on you, and I say it's just slightly tacky. These dots, on the other hand, will take a couple of hours to dry, because if they're a bit wet when you try and apply the gold leaf, you will end up with craters rather than beautiful round domes. I hope you can hear how tacky it was. I have here my imitation gold leaf. I'm using loose leaf, and to apply it, it's as simple. I just have it on the back of one of the pieces of paper, a little overlapping, and then I pull it along till it catches, and keep pulling the paper out so it goes on really nice and flat. Then I just smooth it over. When I've got a complicated shape like this, I don't try and cut little pieces out generally. I just put a piece of gold straight over the top. I overlapped it actually by quite a lot there. That was about 1 centimetre. Usually it just has to be a few millimetres overlap. The gold will not stick to anywhere where we haven't put the gold size. So that will come off in a moment. And we just need to carry on in the same way. So a slight overlap and get it on as flat as possible. But if it gets a bit scrunched up, don't worry, because the excess will come off. If you miss a bit, so I missed that little triangle by the tail, we're going to patch that up in a moment. Now, if we were working in real gold leaf, we would be minimising any wastage because it's so bloomin' expensive. But here we can be a bit more gung-ho. Now you might be tempted to pick it up with your fingers, and you can see how light it is. The paper just gives a little bit more support, and it does minimise the contact, because as a general rule, we want to not touch the gold leaf with our fingers, because the oils in our fingers will lead to possibly a bit of tarnishing. Now it would be a waste just to use a whole sheet here, so you can cut your leaf into a better shape. When you're cutting, keep it between the paper and then cut, because if you try and actually cut a piece of the leaf, it will just all scrunch up and go in a right mess. So when you're finished placing everything, it will look a right mess. It'll look maybe something like this. Take a soft, clean brush and we can gently put it into place and start just rubbing off the excess. So I'm using just a gentle circular motion, and I'm pushing it down as I'm clearing the excess. So look, that's one of the little dots that we deliberately put in. And there's obviously another leg here. Now, if you've got any gaps in your gold leaf, what you can do is use some of the little leftover bits and just fill them in like that. The leftover bits are called skewings. Now you can see the edges of the sheet. That is just part of the process and shows that it is genuine gold leaf and not gold paint. Did I say that the gaps are called holidays? There you go. So you fill your holidays with your skewings. You use a very gentle brush for this process, because if you use something stiffer, it may end up actually scratching the gold leaf. If at any point, say like here, I have some gold leaf sticking to a place I don't want it to be in, you can take the end of a pair of scissors and actually scratch it away. Maybe I smudged some of my gold size and so it was sticking there. Don't worry, you can do something about that. You see, I've broken the edge here. I was talking about making the edge of the tail look fluffy. Say I hadn't done enough of that. Again, I could scratch off a little and just break up some of that edge to make it look fluffier. And there's the mouth. The only thing left to do is to reinstate the whiskers. So I've got my pigment pen, and you will find that for fine lines the Indian ink will actually go over the gold leaf, and there will be some in the background. Once you're happy with your gold leafing, we need to seal it, because imitation gold leaf has a high amount of copper in it. It will tarnish with time. Traditionally, you would use a shellac lacquer. I find it easier to use a spray varnish, so I use a gloss spray varnish. If you use matte, obviously you will take away the shine of your gold leaf. So I use a gloss spray varnish that's designed to go over metal. Now, if you've only put a little bit of gold leaf onto your watercolour painting, obviously a brush on something like this is perfect, and you can just protect that. On this particular image, Once I've put spray varnish to protect the gold leaf, I'll come back with a brush matte varnish and go over the fox, because I want that to be matte against the gloss. Now, this will really depend on your particular circumstances. I cannot sign on top of the gold leaf, so I'm going to sign this on the reverse. I hope that's taken some of the mystery and fear out of gold leafing, and that you'll be able to use it with your watercolours in the future.